pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman and members of the audience, and take a moment this evening for a couple of school board members that have passed away recently. Miss Dottie Maycomber and Mary Hotnick, school employees, passed away recently. May they rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Superintendent, please call the roll for the regular meeting of the Woburn School Committee on October 11, 2022.
Sure. Ms. Chisholm?
Here.
Ms. Cormier?
Present.
Ms. Crowley?
Present.
Mr. Kissel?
Here.
Mr. Lipset? Here. Mr. Mulrennan?
Present.
Dr. Wells?
Present. First up, we have approval of the 9/14/22 school committee minutes.
Motion to approve.
Second. Any discussion on those? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. All right. Anybody have public comment this evening? Seeing none, I do recognize the Ward 7 Alderman. Appreciate his appearance here and bringing back any information to the council or any information to us from the council. Talking to him this evening, he has nothing to add tonight. Thank you. All right, moving on to the reports and presentations of the superintendent staff. We are going to reschedule the special... Student rep. Yeah, I forgot.
You really don't want that to take place tonight.
Well, I didn't see a student rep, but knowing that the superintendent is always willing to step in, he's agreed to be the student rep.
I'm the voice of the students tonight. This is from the high school. The class elections occurred last week, and the activities fair last week went well. There were over 30 clubs represented, and it was a resounding success. Senior Parent Information Night happened on October 4th, and topics covered were Naviance, the ACT, and SAT scores and college recommendations. PSATs for grades 10 and 11 are on the 15th at the high school. Any students who signed up for the PSATs should arrive by 7:30. School council meeting is happening on the 12th at 6 p.m. It's virtual. There are currently 12 parents who are confirmed to attend. Topics will include the NEASC report and the new advisory model and safety protocols. The speaker series is this week on the 13th at the high school at 6:30, and the speaker is Melissa Orkin. And again, that's free at Woburn Memorial High School at 6:30 this week. Progress reports are scheduled to be sent out on the 14th, and we are now using PowerSchool, the new student information system. And thank you to Ms. Judkins for coming by and helping with faculty concerns surrounding the new timeline. And the National Honor Society induction is on the 26th, starting at 6:15 in the Woburn Memorial High School auditorium.
Thank you. Don't see any questions for the superintendent. Not sure he'd be able to answer them as well as the students. But do appreciate passing the information on.
Sure.
And we understand our student rep is heavily involved in the volleyball season, and that's preventing her from here. But we look forward to her parents and potentially the other students in the near future. Okay, so next up is the reports and presentation of the superintendent and staff. The Special Ed Parent Advisory Council was going to appear before us this evening, but they're unable to appear. We'll reschedule them for the next meeting if they're available. Okay. Now we had
So at this point, Mcas results were made public, and we've doing some analysis here at the district level and with our leadership team throughout the district. And so to present this information tonight publicly to the school committee and to whomever else is watching, Courtney Young, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction.
Thank you. So we'll be sharing the MCAS results tonight at the district level, and then families can expect for the results of their students to come home at the end of this week. So we want to move forward. So I brought us back to a slide that I had started with last year where we talked about MCAS results, and really thinking about that tonight we're kind of talking about MCAS, but that MCAS is really kind of one data point that we use as a district. And we really think of it as a flashlight kind of on what are our areas of strength and what are our areas that we could improve on. And we think a lot about when looking at these that we learn as much from kind of our strengths and what we're doing well, and kind of what does that mean and what did we do to get ourselves there, as much as we look at and examine kind of where are the areas that we feel like we can grow. And so we really think about these MCAS results, because last year we were looking at results that were taken kind of half virtual, half in person. So this is really the first time, kind of the post-pandemic time, that we think about it kind of as our baseline. And so when we spoke to our administrators last week, when we first kind of started to look at this as a group, as we look at kind of, we've gone through what we went through with school for the past few years, and this gives us a really kind of an understanding, as I said, kind of like that spotlight on where are we right now. And as we think about kind of, and we'll talk a little bit in the future meetings, it was kind of the right time too, as we think about our next strategic plan, that we're kind of thinking about, okay, this is what we know right now, and what does that mean that we need to do kind of moving forward. So I'll talk a little bit about the results that we have, as well as I'll also talk about kind of what are the things that we already have in place and that we're already doing as a result of them. So we can go to the next one. Great. So just a reminder that we kind of the tools that we use when looking at data in public schools. We have our analytics dashboards. So these are what we use at our kind of building-based level, where we're looking at data that's not just MCAS, but our MCAS as well as all of our screening tools that we give. So we're constantly making sure kind of are the tools that we're giving in the classroom, our screening tools, do they align with the data that we're seeing as our outcome on MCAS, and kind of guiding our instruction that way. So then if you go to the next slide, our teachers also have access to dashboards where they're getting to see students as they're coming into their classroom, as well as collecting them along the way. I just listed kind of along the side some of the tools that we use. So again, while MCAS is one part of what we talk about, we're also looking at many other data points throughout the year to inform the instruction that we do. Next. Great. So we, part of the work that DESE has provided for this upcoming school year is a partnership with a tool called Open Architects. And this ultimately we provide, we use our MCAS scores and our access scores, and it allows us kind of really easy ways to kind of look at data. And so what I used as when kind of putting it together and as I walked through the scores is directly from the dashboards that I got from using the Open Architects tool. And so if you go to the next slide, what the tool allows us to do, and this is an example, we have our MCAS and our access scores, we're able to filter view pretty much any way that we want. So it's very easy for us to kind of look at the data and very quickly tell, these are the things that we did really well, these are the areas that we can grow on. As we've been kind of working through our school improvement plans with principals and as they relate to the strategic plan, they've been really kind of diving into a lot of the details, especially when looking at our filters of our demographics. As you can see, kind of all the different filters of how they can look at the students in their building to be kind of designing things out. So we've been kind of testing the tool for this year, but so far we found that we were able to kind of in a room, especially with all of our administrators, kind of get information really quickly, which is really helpful. Oh, okay. Now we're there. So I'm just going to kind of talk through a few things, and I tried to, I know, I feel like especially with MCAS, I feel like I throw out a lot of acronyms, so I'm going to stop along the way a little bit and try to kind of, for those, kind of a reminder, we haven't talked about them a little bit. But you'll see kind of we have our two pieces, again, this is for using our tool, and so at the top it gives us our percentage of proficiency, and then it says the average SGP, so that's talking about our student growth percentiles, and so that's looking at how much did students grow from the previous year. So the PY, so compared to PY, is comparing our proficiency compared to our previous year, and then compared to PY is comparing our growth from the previous year. And then it also looks at it as compared to the state. The bars along the side is looking at our scores from 2017 up to present. And then along in the box in the left corner is looking at the blue line is us, Woburn, and that is looking at our percent proficient from 2017 to now, and the dashed line is the percent proficient of the state. So from looking at the data quickly, what we can see kind of as an overall is that we are, as compared to the state, we are above, and that where we see areas of maybe kind of things that we have kind of dipped down in is consistent with the performance at the state. And so really we're looking at kind of the performance of students in Woburn is consistent with the performance of those at the state level, kind of across the state, as well as we are also looking at, in most cases along the way, that we are in fact above the state. What's great in both our ELA and math is you'll see that compared to previous year growth percentile, that both of those percentiles have gone up. So we went up 19 percentile in ELA and 12 in math. So kind of some bright spots that aren't necessarily shown here is that our, across the state, the 5th grade ELA scores declined, but in Woburn they went significantly up. As well as in our math, our grade 4 math growth percentile was 42. And so it shows that we kind of, this was bringing 3, 4, 5 together, but we had some areas and some spaces where we saw some really incredible growth. Across the board, kind of one area that we know and we've talked a lot about, especially at our elementary level, is that measurement and data consistently across all of the levels is a space where we could show some improvement. So our coaches will be looking at that with our teachers. Where is it happening that we're teaching that throughout the year? Does it need to be moved around? Things like that. If you go to the next slide, kind of just talking a little bit about what are the things at the elementary level that we are doing. So kind of two things that we say a lot, especially when talking about supporting students, is this kind of MTSS, which stands for Multi-Tiered Systems for Support. And this is where Ms. Ryan and I kind of live a lot, because we talk about our tiers are really, when we're talking about our tiers, tier 1 is kind of that general education, what is the instruction that's happening for all students. Tier 2 is what is the support when we've identified that students need help. And then tier 3 is students who need specially designed instruction. So they need it a completely different way. And that's really when we talk about special education. And so we look at, our data across the board of all of our students and make sure that is our tier 1, what we want it to be is our tier 2, are we supporting and intervening, and then our tier 3. And so these tiered systems are proactive. So we look at our Mcas data, but we look at all of our data and make sure, are we matching students with what they need based off of what the data is telling us. And so ways that we're addressing that, just this year at the elementary level, one of them is our Compass plan with Wilson, which we've talked about, I believe, previous meeting. But what this is doing is we're building in-house trainers. So we have teachers in the district who are being trained in all of the programs that we use so that we are able to immediately train our staff. So that means if staff need a refresher, we have staff within the building that can train. If there's a building that would really benefit from looking at the data, they would benefit from having a refresher in this area on a program, and we have our in-house trainers who can provide that support. So it's making sure that our educators have that professional learning that they need really quickly. We've been working, and Melissa Orkham will be here on Thursday, but we've been working on developing really a comprehensive literacy plan. So looking at our students over the next 5 years and kind of building out what are the the needs of our literacy instruction and kind of building and planning that out so that we can kind of continue to every single year see an increase in our students who are proficient in their reading levels. So one way that this year we're really focusing on it is around data-driven instruction. So we are revamping kind of our data meetings at all of our elementary level, and Melissa Orkin has been supporting and already done a ton of professional development around this with us. But we're really building kind of building-based teams that not only have general education teachers and principals, but have special education teachers, school speech and language pathologists, our school psychologists, our content specialists so that everyone is coming to the table and looking at the data and developing really clear plans for how we're addressing it for every single student in our grade levels. And so this kind of comprehensive look at data is making sure that we're kind of reacting right away, this kind of proactive approach to our student needs. And then we're continuing on with things that we have been building for a while. We have our WIN block, our What I Need block. Our students, those are at least 3 days a week, targeted support for our students. Our content specialists continue to do a really incredible job. We're getting the groups down as small as we possibly can, so students are getting lots of individualized support, as well as we have our professional learning communities where our teachers and our content specialists are meeting monthly to talk about students, to talk about instruction. And then we are in the process of also retraining all of our staff on our district accommodation plan, our DCAP, which is the accommodations that all students have access to. So this is just kind of, that there are already so many supports that are in place to really address our student needs. All right. So in our middle schools, again, kind of some bright spots that we have, especially in math, is we had our grade 6 students had a growth percentile of 22, and our grade 8 had a percentile growth of 20, and those were both kind of above the state. In ELA, all of our growth, so you'll see compared to the previous year, our growth increased, but it was not kind of to the same as kind of other areas in the state. With that said, we went up. I think it's just that we need to go more. When looking more closely, really what this was across both, in terms of like our areas that we've really focused on, and we've already started to talk, especially at the middle school level, was our writing. So not only was it our writing scores within ELA, like our response to text, but it was also our open responses in math. And again, I think that what's helpful is that we're able to kind of see that very quickly, and so we've already kind of started to build out that plan. So our next page. So in response to the writing specifically, we last year for the first time we moved our WIN block up to grade 6, which was a really great success. And when talking last week especially, as we're planning our next round of WIN block, we're looking at writing across all of our WINs, so whether they're in a math focus group or they're in an ELA focus group, that writing standards will be embedded across the board during our WIN time, as well as we have additional reading blocks for students who weren't either kind of the needs improvement range, who are not receiving special education, that kind of tier 2 group, have been put into additional reading skills classes as needed. One area that we've had a lot of success in terms of how we're looking at kind of that tiered system at the middle school is utilizing IXL. IXL is an online learning tool, so a student can log on and a teacher can assign them a specific skill or a specific standard to work on. When working with, especially Mr. Quayle here, when looking at his data at the Joyce, he was able to look at the classrooms that had used IXL with full fidelity, and the increase of their scores was significant, especially in his 8th grade classrooms. So they'll be instituting an IXL Thursday. One block every Thursday will be devoted to kids, all students receiving kind of a targeted block during the day where they're doing IXL based off of their areas of need. So that can be for students who are needing kind of on or below level, but also for our students who can be doing some personalized learning above grade level. Coordinators are looking at data with their different teams. They're curating resources as well as making any curriculum adjustments that they might need to make. As we said, we are doing a retrain on our district accommodation plan, as well as we have partnered with 2 coaches through SEAM Collaborative who will be doing walkthroughs with our middle school principals around the DCAP, around kind of accommodations, meeting students' needs, culturally responsive teaching, and they're going to be helping principals kind of then curate kind of feedback that they can also be providing and working with staff kind of getting into our rooms and kind of helping us curate more resources than we already have. All right. So at the high school level, our Ela Scores continue to be a strength. Although there was a slight decrease, we are still significantly above that of the state average. And again, when looking kind of closely at our skills in ELA, we have kind of our areas of language and reading. Those we're looking at around like 80 kids who are 80% of our students are at or above in kind of those standards. Again, the area that impacted us the most in ELA was our writing and our response to text. For what it's worth, showing consistency gave us a clear focus moving forward. And so I think that especially, again, not sure why we were there, but it gives us an opportunity to kind of look at that more closely and make our plan moving forward. Our math, although there was a small decline, we continue to be slightly above the state average, and we did continue to show growth, just not at the same rate as which they saw at the state level. And so I think that, again, we're really kind of looking at why that might have been and making some changes there. At the high school, kind of the response to our scores looks a little bit different. All of our English and math teachers will be provided with the information on the students who did not pass, as well, and they will be asked to embed Mcas support into their classes. When possible, students have been added to an Mcas math or an English class as needed. Our ML and special education teachers have been provided the information, and they're providing the targeted support to the students that they work with. Students will be notified this week regarding their scores, and guidance will be meeting with students to develop their action plans for what they need to do in preparation. And all students have access to the extra help tutoring at the high school. So the next part, which I think is kind of overall, and I kind of left it together, I put it together because I really look at it as an overall flow. This is the fifth year that we had, this is the fifth year of full implementation of our new science program, STEM Scopes. And when I spoke with Kim Guston-Hoven, the science coordinator, about it, and we'll kind of look at especially our middle school where we saw really significant growth, especially that, much more as the state was kind of declining, we were really kind of going up, and I asked really what the teachers, when they talked about it, what the difference was, and that having a kind of a program that we are fully implementing kindergarten up through 8th grade, and it is consistent language and a consistent program, that the middle school teachers said that they can already see the difference of our students who are coming in from our elementary schools, having done kind of the same program, the same language. And so we can see that in our, in our middle schools, we're already kind of above the state, and then that's only helping our elementary schools above the state. It's only helping our middle schools go, that much higher. And if you go to the next one, at our high school, again, our percentage is 12% that of the state, and across all category areas within science, we were above the state percentage on all of them. So I think it's a really incredible tribute to the work of Kim, but also the work of all of our science educators. Kind of their kind of coming together and working together on the process. Next, so this is, although it seems separate, it does come together. We talk a lot about academic tiered systems, but we know that the academic is one portion of the day for our students, and that their social emotional learning is the other part. And so a piece of that too is that for a lot of students, their performance may not be academic. It might be something that's social emotional learning that's impacting their learning. And so we are not only looking at our tiered systems, and Ms. Ryan and I have done a lot of work around the academic part, and now we're really focusing on to make sure that our SEL tiered systems really match that across the tiers. And so we are working this year, so we talk a lot about our universal academic screeners, like DIBELS and IXL. We'll be adopting a universal screening tool for SEL, so we'll be able to add that into kind of our data of looking at our students from kind of all aspects. We received an SEL grant that's helping fund this work, as well as that through GUSI we're able to provide all of our administrators and our teachers with kind of these professional learning communities where they can be learning how to connect with their understanding about the social emotional learning screener of their students and how they can connect that to the academic learning of students in the classroom. So the last one, just questions. But really I think that it's about, I think there's a lot of things that can be celebrated, and then I think there's areas for us that we absolutely have identified, and I think that as we start to talk more about the strategic plan and we start to talk more about individual school improvement plans, we'll really see kind of what are some of the targeted things that we're doing to address kind of the areas of need.
Thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Crowley.
So in terms of data trends in the MCAS,
Yeah.
by the way, congratulations on science. That's actually really thrilling. So that's, we implement a new curriculum now, seeing it actually pay off in data, so that's awesome. But my question is what we're seeing in MCAS, is that consistent in what we're seeing in other district assessments as well?
Yes. So we're still unpacking our fall assessment data, but the percentages that we see in our reading for DIBELS is consistent with what we see as our data in Ela Scores. One thing that they will do when kind of meeting at the building-based data meetings is looking at student scores compared to each other, and if there are students where it is different, that will be part of them what might have been that reason, and kind of what does that mean for the need for them. But yes, I would say that they are consistent. What I know, especially when talking about math, is that our IXL data, especially last year, showed student profiles that had kind of gaps in kind of funny places. So typically they would see kind of the same consistent, in 8th grade math, the 8th grade teacher would see kind of consistently like, fractions is always an area that the students come up and there's kind of some need. They were seeing just over the impact of the past few years, students who had kind of gaps in areas that maybe they weren't consistent, and so there definitely has been kind of having to like build that into the instructional part. And so I think one thing we talked about last year especially was that we weren't going to make up every gap in 1 year, right? We're continuing to make them over a few. And so I think that by continuing to use the same tools, it helps. But I think there's kind of a few different reasons why we see some of those pieces. But I would say that they are consistent, yes.
And the ELA sort of, challenges, what is it popping up to be? Is it the writing?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I would say that's pretty consistent.
Okay. So are you also seeing that sort of play out in social studies as well because of the writing piece?
So because social studies is not tested.
Right.
I do, because we are, especially at the secondary level for this year, we have our humanities coordinator that works with both departments. And so she's actually done a lot of conversations around the writing across the two, and that was actually before even kind of this piece came out. But that has been a piece of the conversation is kind of how those two work together. But I think that writing especially a lot of it is about like building of stamina.
Right.
And so if students have not been writing consistently over time, I'm not surprised that would be something that would be, have areas of growth.
I asked my question poorly. What I was getting to is exactly what are you sort of thinking about other curriculums that could reinforce the writing piece? But you answered that, so thank you.
Absolutely.
And you said, and I just want to make sure I understand this, you said that coaches will be working with teachers. Again, and I know I always ask this, but can you just explain again what the coaches are doing in terms of taking this data and helping teachers with it?
So at the elementary level, we have coordinators and coaches, and then at the secondary level, we have coordinators. And the roles are kind of function a little bit differently. At the elementary level, our coaches are kind of part of the data meeting process, and then they work, so if a teacher identifies that they have a group of students that needs to work on this standard, the coaches will meet with them, kind of co-plan with them, they'll go in and co-teach with them, kind of support them with resources, and really kind of help as they're looking at it. Another part of it is, especially with our district assessments, our elementary STEM coach, she's been offering sessions for when IXL data is done, where she goes in and sits down with teachers and helps them disaggregate the data, help them plan lessons based off of it, help them plan interventions based off of it. So it's really kind of a partnership in the process, especially from those who have really kind of a lot of knowledge in that base. At the secondary level, our coordinators, they look at the data not only kind of at the district part, but they also will look at it with teachers and they'll help them work through it that way. But a lot of it too is about planning for what is future professional development that the department might need. So for example, the history department might decide, looking at that data, that they want to take on more professional learning about writing across the curriculum and kind of planning the PD that way.
Thank you so much. And just, I don't know if you emphasize it enough, but the high school is really above the state level. So that's really exciting. And our math and our science overall is, what do they say, killing it. So thank you so much.
I texted her right away. I said that you're going to be very happy.
It's exciting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lipset.
I second Ms. Crowley's congratulations. When Mcas can confirm what we know we are doing well, that's a nice thing to see. To what extent have we had the chance to sort of dig into population data in terms of vulnerable students, low-income students, ML students, students with disabilities?
Yeah.
And you know, I don't need you to rattle off data right at this moment, but are we seeing it consistent with the state? Are we seeing any areas of concern?
I would say that it's consistent with the state. I think that there are subgroups that have been impacted more over the past few years. I think that there are also areas where we've seen subgroups have an incredible growth, right? I think that it's always that it's easy to say that there's like this part that didn't go well, but I think that it always is matched with there are places that it did. A lot of that work has been done really kind of working at building-based levels, because I think that what we saw is, while there are some consistencies, it also is, you know, some of the buildings really look at it differently. And so when kind of building out our current profile for our schools and kind of building out what is their goal for their building, we've done a lot of work with kind of working with our principals around the subgroups.
Thank you for that. And you mentioned at the high school, so students who receive needs improvement or lower scores can have MCAS support embedded in classes in English and math. What does that look like at a classroom level or a student level?
So some of it is a co-taught classroom where the ML teacher is in with our math educators, and so they're providing kind of that support, kind of front loading or supporting during small group instruction. A lot of it too is looking at what is the unit that they're on and what are the standards of the students in their class that were linked to that, and they'll go back and do like the pre-teach to kind of build the support from there, as well as they do kind of their own formative assessment check-ins and build it that way. But a lot of it is also really a combination between our special education staff and our ML staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I did have a couple of observations. One thing that struck me is that our exceeding expectations group seems to be pretty consistent. We don't seem to get growth there. And when we talk about what we're doing, I'm not seeing where we're working to move people from, meets expectations to exceeding expectations.
Yes. So we actually just had this conversation with our elementary principals last week, especially during our win block time, because that is when our students who are meeting expectations or exceeding expectations are also being provided kind of targeted support. And so we talked a lot about it, that we talk a lot about our instruction and kind of matching our instruction for our students who have shown that they are not meeting, but kind of thinking about as a group, what are the resources that our educators need to kind of to support that group, because I agree. I also think kind of to your point, I think that's where we see a lot of our subgroup kind of delineation too.
And because what would be interesting to see is how does the state, like what percentage of the state exceeds expectations? Because we seem to mimic the state a lot, and I was just wondering whether we mimic it, exceeds expectation, or is that an area where failing in the school system is really making the students that are up at the upper tiers, moving them higher up?
I do not know that off the top of my head in terms of how we mimic. I will say that we absolutely identified it as an area for growth, especially in our the comprehensive literacy plan that we've been working on with Melissa Orkin, is that we've talked a lot not only about kind of moving our students who are currently not meeting expectation, but what are we doing over the next 5 years to enforce this, support the students who are currently meeting, and what do they need to be exceeding.
And the other thing, what other metrics do we use at the high school level, in the middle school? The things I saw were mostly, I think, elementary. What kind of other metrics do we use at the middle and high school?
Yeah, so that middle school we use IXL across all grade level. Actually, we use it in all areas. We use it in science, history, reading, and math. At the high school level, they have developed common assessments. And some of our departments have ones that they are currently revising, actually based off a lot of this. Some of them have new ones that they have just created, but those are kind of common-based assessments that are based off of the standards. A lot of that is the work that we've done in Atlas in terms of developing, and they use those kind of standard-based assessments, and they use those to calibrate across and for data.
Okay. And then one other thing, just for the future, I know in the paper there was an article about how long will it take us to bring students back from the loss of education. And so I was thinking that maybe at some point in the spring, you're doing all these metrics on students. If we're not seeing a growth, think about what we need to do during the summer to help these students, because there's talk about that you're going to need to have more summer programs to make that. So if we could just follow up in the spring, where you think our students are, like in terms of rebuilding their growth versus what we might need to provide during the summer.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for indulging me in the questions. Anything else from the committee? Mr. Mulrennan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Young, I just, great presentation, great information. I like the way you started out with the fact that it's Mcas, but there's other benchmarks out there, other evaluations that you perform in our school system. Just wondering, perhaps the administration could answer, this presentation was wonderful. Some of us, even with our glasses, are hard to see on the screen. I know cable TV is doing their best to get it out to the public. Where would someone find it? Is this somehow going to be vetted into the public school website? And if so, where would someone find it?
Yeah, so, I don't know if it has the state website been updated yet, or this information is public on the state website.
The DESI website.
Yeah, the report.
You're asking about.
I'm just more concerned, obviously.
The analysis that you did.
Yeah.
Kind of like your presentation tonight, because I do appreciate in here too, you're defining some of the terminology that, is out there these days. So if someone had a chance to peruse the website of the school system and kind of look at it over, it's there. You can kind of look at the Woburn site too. So DESI's one way to look at it. Now Woburn can look at it, and perhaps someone had concerns,
We
issues.
should be loading it on the committee, like every meeting after the meeting.
Yeah,
Do that.
whatever you
That's no
do.
problem.
Yeah.
Just something like this, be great information for those that can't quite see the screen at home. Thank you.
I tried to slow my pace as best as I can.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All set?
Yes.
Everybody, thank you very much for the present. Oh, Superintendent.
No, thank you, Ms. Young, and thank you to the educators and staff that made it happen last year. One of the things that, on a call with DESI, that they talked about is this is a new baseline for us. You alluded to that. So 2022, this is a new baseline. We were comparing a lot to last year, but really should be compared to 2019.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that everyone is understanding of that. The other thing they talked about is attendance as a factor over the past couple of years, and especially last year, where you have people still quarantining for 10 days. If a student were quarantined for 10 days, they can go back to school, and their teacher might have been out for 10 days. So, that we know student data as it relates to attendance, but the teacher data, we know our own, but it really, clearly there's a correlation to being in class with our teachers and students together. So I just wanted to remind people that, this is a new baseline, a new normal for us, and, great presentation, and I think it gives us a lot to think about moving forward.
Thank you. Okay, next up, food and services. You want to introduce Paul?
So, at this point, Ms. Ryan's going to provide...
Oh, you're going to switch in the agenda.
You skipped over Bob.
We can do Maureen.
That's why he's smiling.
He's like, shoot.
Big smile on his face.
That was the best presentation
ever gave.
Where's Bob?
Sorry, I was
I know.
Yeah.
Mr. Alcanada to provide an update on food services.
Thank you, Dr. Crowley. And so now that we're about a month into the school year, I just want to give you a quick update on food services at the macro level. But before I go any further, I just wanted to take this opportunity again to thank our cafeteria workers for all of the hard work that they've put in over the past couple of years with the COVID pandemic and continuing. They're continuing to be on the front line. And we are blessed in Woburn to have veteran leaders like our food services director, Lisa Tamayan, and our assistant food services director, Marianne Copy, who have really steered the ship in this area. As you know, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in its FY23 budget, provided monies to continue school lunch to be free to everybody through June 30th, 2023. With that, we have continued to provide breakfast as well at all schools. Through last week, the end of last week, we have served just over 38,000 lunches across the district, which is about a 4.1% increase. Breakfast is down significantly from last year. And the reason that is the case is last year when students entered the building, they were given breakfast. They were encouraged to, of course, eat in the classroom, breakfast in the classroom, or if not, they could take that breakfast home. Now when students come into school, they have to make the effort or the conscious decision to go to the cafeteria to get breakfast. It's not automatically given to them necessarily if they don't go to the cafeteria, and the food can't go home. So it has to stay in school. And so we've seen those numbers dip a little bit. Right now, our biggest hurdle is inflation. The cost of food has, as we all know from our grocery bills, has skyrocketed, and it has, of course, skyrocketed with all of our food distributors. Our main food distributor, Cisco, has had a labor strike, which is complicating already the supply chain issues. Aramark works with a number of food distributors, so we're able to get the food to the kids. It's not that we're without food. It is taking a little bit longer to get that food, but we saw this potentially coming, and so we're able to order some food ahead of time. Labor costs are pretty much even. They will increase once we have a new contract with the cafeteria union. And other than that, it would appear as though that it's going well. Knock on wood. Food services. There haven't been any major disruptions. As I said, inflation, the supply chain has been a little bit of an issue. But we are fortunate where lunch is free for everybody, and that has made a huge difference. And I know that some people on this committee reached out to our state legislators, so thank you. And hopefully this will continue. Hopefully it'll be in the FY24 budget, and we can extend that for another year.
Any questions? Ms. Gomier.
I don't know if you can speak to this, but have Lisa, or is it Marianne?
Marianne.
Spoken to how the free lunches have affected their workflow as far as paperwork, tracking, things like that, things that they had to spend their time on before. Is that lessened? And
I haven't heard that it has been a burden.
I guess I'm looking for, I'm wondering if there's been an improvement.
Oh, the improvement.
Assuming that, and that might not just be them, it might be part of your department too. When everybody is able to get the lunch, then we don't have to go through all the paperwork and then the tracking of how many people are actually eligible.
Sure.
And so those things, have we seen a benefit in that regard?
I can ask that question. I think it has been somewhat easier. We are still, we do still have the requirement to track those who would normally be purchasing lunch in free and reduced. But I can ask that. I haven't asked that particular question. I can.
Okay, great, thank you.
What's that? Mr. Lipset?
I just wanted to briefly note, Mr. Alcanada, you mentioned a 4.1% increase in students who are receiving school lunch. I think this is at least potentially, it's hard to say for sure, but at least potentially the result of the state's action in providing free lunch to all students. And to me, that's one of the most important numbers of the night. That's an extra 4.1% of our students who we can guarantee are receiving food every day through our school district. This hunger among student populations has been a consistent problem. If our students aren't fed, they aren't learning. Again, I just want to highlight how important it is that the state was able to do this. And I echo Mr. Alcanada, I hope this continues.
Okay, all set? Mr. Kissel?
Question. Typically, in a year, when we have monies coming in, there's a surplus, and if so, it goes to ovens and things like that. How is that being affected? Because there's no real profit being made, or is it still?
Yes, yeah. We're still, we still
State's
have money
reimbursing.
coming in from the reimbursement to the state
Okay.
into our cafeteria revolving. It had this, the free lunch has not had any, it has not hindered the money coming into the revolving account. This is not a, it doesn't hurt that account. And we have, in fact, been able to, just this summer, been able to replace some aging equipment, freezers and that sort.
And on the other side, which is the, I don't know what the other terms are, your things that aren't part of the free, so the extras. I forget what the term
snacks.
is. What is it?
Snack.
You mean
A la
snacks?
carte, a la carte, yeah,
A la
yeah,
carte,
yeah.
yeah.
So how is that being affected, because now they're not paying for a lunch, and maybe they still have the same kind of money, a couple of bucks, $3, $5.
Yeah, I think
Are we
that's
seeing
been-
an increase?
We haven't. I think that's been pretty flat. I
Oh,
don't have
okay.
I don't have those statistics, but I think it has been pretty consistent, pretty flat.
Good.
No, Ms. Chisholm?
How about staffing for the cafeteria? I mean, we've had staffing issues across the board, but
Yep.
cafeterias.
Yeah, so like every area of the district, we've had staffing issues. We have been lucky and able to, we did have some resignations and some retirements. We were able to fill all of those positions, save one, which we're still actively looking. I believe it's at the high school. So all in all, we're in really good shape. We just have one vacancy.
Thank you.
Ms. Crowley?
One quick one. So folks are still having to fill out free lunch applications. Is that right? Because how are we defining low-income
Yeah,
students?
so
then?
they can certainly fill out a free lunch application.
Yeah.
And they're not qualifying for
Right.
free lunch, but they're on record.
Right.
Yes. You can ask another one if you'd like. Just
No,
a
no.
quick
But
one.
I think her thing was, how are you collecting the information about who
Through that,
qualifies?
yeah.
Because that number of low-income students is helpful for our future
Yeah.
planning, so I
Absolutely.
assume that
Yep.
we're doing
So how do we
it other
collect
ways.
that information?
Still the same way.
But there's no
There's no
rationale for
there's no-
somebody to do it unless they
Correct.
want to.
Yeah.
So should we do a better outreach to maybe make sure we're collecting all the people, figure out some way to ask for that information, but letting them know they're still going to get their free lunch, and this is really more to help the district, I
And
think.
there's automatic qualifiers
Right.
too with
Right.
other state agencies.
Yeah.
we have the access to that data, so they qualify that way as well.
One follow-up question. Do we know what percentage of our students are low income or are eligible for free or reduced?
It varies. I don't know the overall district. It certainly varies by school. Yeah, some are higher than others.
Because that can also be helpful for if either the area or the city reaches a certain amount, then the community is eligible as a whole. So
I
if
think
we,
only one school is at 50, it was the Shamrock. We're hovering around 30.
yeah.
Any other questions? Thing about the breakfast program, do we need to do better publicity, like telling the parents, tell the kids to go in and get their lunch or something like that?
We certainly, I can ask the food services director to work with the principals to see if there's...
Maybe remind them that there's a free breakfast.
Yeah.
And
And they can drop off early.
Yeah.
Right, they can drop off early.
Yeah.
It's at least the Shamrock, I know.
In some schools, so
Go
just
to
reinforce that it's available, because if we're offering it, might as well have people take advantage of it. Okay. All right, Nope.
No, thank you.
Thank you for the update. All right, now you can.
I jumped the gun. I apologize, Mr. Alcanada.
Okay.
Ms. Ryan with an update, student services.
Okay, so I thought I would start with an update on the early childhood program. Woburn is experiencing like what many districts are experiencing, and it's a high number of 3-year-olds that are coming into our program. We currently have, at this time, 142 enrolled students, and that's a fairly large number for October, after 1 month of school. And because students that come into the early childhood program, what happens is they turn 3 and they enter throughout the year. So we're starting at a pretty high number. We currently have 3 classes at the Shamrock, 8 classes at the Reeves, and we have 30 students that are currently in the evaluation process. We have another 11 that are in the early intervention queue that are turning 3 before March of 23. And we have not yet looked at the numbers from March to June because we don't have the data yet. But so you can see that our numbers are fairly large. Out of the 11 classrooms, at the Shamrock School, though 3 of them are all RISE classrooms, and at the Reeves, 2 of them are RISE classrooms and 1 is a PALS class, and then the other 5 are integrated classrooms. The significance with that is that the 5 integrated classrooms have both morning and PM sessions, so essentially we have double sessions coming in. And the remaining 6 classes go 5 days a week, and they are in school from 8:30 to 1. So these are students that have more significant needs and they need more instructional time. The preschool is actually a really fun place. If you ever want to be cheered up, take a visit to the Shamrock or the Reeves. They're very busy. The educators have just a ton of energy and they work really hard with the kids. But it's something we need to keep an eye on because of the space issues that we have, and the numbers are growing every year. So that would be our early childhood program. And we do have open peer spots, by the way. We still have spots for neighborhood peers in our AM and PM sessions at the Reeves. Okay, our nursing team, I've spent a little bit more time with them, and the nursing offices, the offices are very busy. Kids are in and out. They work very hard. And this year, we utilized some grant funds to bring in 2 resource nurses, and they have been very busy in helping us for coverage, for absences, for different pieces. So we have 12 building nurses, 2 resource nurses, and we currently have 4 special education nurses. One's a CNA. And the nurses really are going above and beyond for us. We have different situations that come up all the time. For example, we had a little boy that was brought into school, and he was not ambulatory, and the nurses worked very hard to quickly get him a fitted wheelchair and the support that he needed. So just a shout out, they've really worked hard. They're a great team. So this year, we were very fortunate to get to partner with Endicott College and bring in master's level fellows. We have 6 fellows. They are all DESE licensed. They're licensed teachers. And we have one at the high school. She is teaching grade 10, 11, and 12, both EC classes and honors classes English. We have a fellow at the Joyce Middle School who has been instrumental in the LEAP program already. She's been a wonderful addition, and it has really allowed us to increase the programming for our language-based students at the Joyce. We have 3 at the elementary schools in the capacity of reading interventionists. They're at the Goodyear, the Reeves, and the Hurl Wyman. And they are working with our content specialists and really helping to boost up the kids that need some work with their and interventions with their reading. And we have one fellow who is in the early childhood program. She is actually in one of our substantially separate RISE programs. So this has been actually these 6 individuals have been a great asset to the school. Okay, school safety. So this is something that's important. We're always talking about it. We're always thinking about how to make our buildings safe, how to keep our students and staff safe. We have a safety assessment that is in process. Hopefully we will have a report, some results from that before long. I was able to join the Be Safe event, a community partnership with our school resource officers, where we talked about how to utilize the tool to have current data in the event of an emergency. And later this month, I will be going to the NEMLEC STARS has a 2-day event. That's the Northeastern Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council. They are running a 2-day event on the standard reunification method, so I'm excited to be attending that. And we also have our buildings that are running routine ALICE drills. So we're constantly taking a look at safety and what we can do to be proactive. Mental health supports. Ms. Young talked a bit about this, and I think this is, one of the things that we are really collaborating on. It is mental health across the tiers. It's supports that we have in place for all students at Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. We continue to have the William James interface. We have had referrals this year already from the Alta Vista, the Goodyear, and the Kennedy in the month of September alone. The Home for Little Wanderers is working at the high school, the Joyce, the Kennedy, and they will soon be working at the elementary school. We have clinicians that are providing counseling services to our students. And we are working with the Edinburgh Center. We have an intern, and we are expecting a clinician soon to come on board and provide additional supports. We are also working with a consultant from Triumph, who is working at each level, and they are helping us with our therapeutic programs to really ensure that we're doing everything we can. We need our students to be available to learn, and social emotional health is very important, and we recognize that. We're excited to be getting ready with the universal screening tool, and we're looking at many different new tools that our educators can use, as well as we have professional development planned on November 8th to try to grow some of our clinicians. So this was very exciting. This shout out to Dave Dunkley and his crew over the summer. They did an incredible job. This is what our new life skills rooms, the Joyce Middle School, what the kitchen looks like. It has all new appliances that are modern, handicapped accessible, and the students are loving it. It's fantastic. It's important to teach life skills early on to help students so that we are transitioning them to be independent, and they really did a fantastic job with this. And then our Student Success Speaker Series. So we started the year with Sarah Ward. We had a nice turnout with over 80 families. Last week we had Fitz and I. She came out and she spoke to our multilingual families. We had a nice turnout. It was a good event, and I think people really appreciated it. It was very collaborative. And Thursday night we have Melissa Orkin. She will be speaking Empowering Your Child's Literacy Development. The event, it's free, and Melissa has been really working very, very closely with us in Woburn. She can answer questions, she's working with our educators, she is highly skilled, and for anyone that's interested in learning about their child's literacy development, you couldn't find a better speaker. She's great. And lastly, I know Chairman Wells asked me to mention the transportation. Our transportation seems to be stabilized. We are not getting complaints at this point. The rides seem to have leveled off. Students, from what we are aware, are getting to school on time. And if anybody is having concerns, I would encourage you to call the Student Services office so that we can address it. But I believe that has stabilized, and we're in a much better place than we were earlier in the year.
That's good to hear. Okay, thank you. Ms. Cormier?
The fellows from Endicott College, is this a paid position or like a stipend?
The way the fellows programs work is we fund tuition for the students, and they are full-time employees for the year. So they're licensed, and they are essentially our employees for the school year.
They're in master's programs.
Yes.
And what is the Be Safe program?
So that is a community partnership. It's a tool where members of the police department, the fire department, it's a data collection system so that in the event of an emergency, you have real-time information to access what you need, depending on what the situation is.
So for an example, like...
if you were in a school and you needed to know where to go, you could see a map of it.
Oh, excellent. I know Ms. Chisholm mentioned that as far as the Malcolm White when the police went through, knowing what door to use and whatever. What about, my last question, Edinburgh? What is that?
It is a center that we partner with. It works similar to the Home for Little Wanderers, where we have clinicians that come in.
During the school day?
Yes, and work with our students.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Lipset?
Just a few quick questions. So on the master's levels fellows, I would assume that we're working to follow up with folks as they graduate from these programs and retain their services on a full-time basis, assuming that we wanted to.
It's actually funny because I've already had some building people come to me and a month in, and yes, we're very happy to
Employee
have them.
recommendation for them to stay.
Test
Yes.
driving.
Exactly right. Looking for help
After a
wherever we
month
can
of
find
school.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're staying, right?
Yes.
We always have these catered lunches.
We
Wait till you see what we do in June.
We actually worked very hard. Ms. Young and I met with the fellows over the summer, and we worked very hard to talk with them about what they wanted and what they were looking for in an experience to make it so that it was, something that they wanted to do. And we tried very hard to match them with our needs. And I think we did a good job with that. So far, the feedback has been very positive across the board.
I mean, speaking from personal experience, the student teaching model is not always one that gives you a really clear sense of what the job is like. And it sounds like this is a much more full experience for students / teachers. So I think that's really positive. Is this a program that we're considering continuing into the future as well, not just a stopgap? On ALICE training, I keep coming across articles that sort of talk about some of the sort of perceived failings of Alice or weaknesses therein. And one of the things that sort of keeps coming through with that is that students can have adverse reactions to trainings like this, especially those that are done in particular ways where you have sort of someone playing a particular role and having to sort of really play act the experience, especially in light of, events in Uvalde, Texas last year and constant reinforcement or negative reinforcement of this throughout the media. I'm wondering what supports we might offer for students who have adverse reactions during Alice drills, how we're trying to mitigate that, things like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think one of the goals for this year is to look at some of our materials and some of the updates that Alice has put out, and to be very sensitive to what is age appropriate. And Alice actually has put out some new material that very specifically addresses what is appropriate by age group. And I do think we need to be very sensitive to that.
Okay. Thank you. I know this is a live wire of a topic, but you mentioned preschool enrollments going up. What are our options right now in terms of space? I know it's starting to get a little tight.
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
And I do not have an answer other than it is something that I think we are actively discussing. And I think it is recognized that every year we have the need to add classrooms, and it's definitely something that we need to look carefully at this year.
And I think it's being looked at in the ongoing assessment of our feasibility buildings.
Wanted to keep it on the radar.
Yep.
And then just last, I just wanted to do the shout out to the Life Skills Room, which looks like an amazing opportunity. I don't know if you had a chance to see it in action with students.
It's fantastic. They're bringing food to Mr. Quayle. It's really nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All set?
Thank you.
Crowley?
I just want to remark that Mr. Lips has stole both of my questions.
So noted.
You stole one of mine earlier, so
I thought of
we're
them
evening it
first.
out.
But I too hear concerns about Alice, and so I was thinking maybe this committee could have a refresher, because we approved Alice, I think, in 2014. It might be a nice agenda item to refresh why we chose Alice over other trainings and sort of get some updates. Thanks, Mr. Lipset. And secondly, I just wanted to state that 142 students is in fact another elementary school, so we should really be considering about a separate early childhood education center, because we have a preschool at the Shamrock, a preschool at the Reeves, and it'd be excellent to have it all in one building. So I'll make a motion. Just kidding. But I think that it's high. It's like high enough of a priority to go to resources and really start teasing out some brainstorming. And Mr. Viola can bring it to the council too.
Yeah, that will be down there next week for a new school.
Yeah. We only need 87
Just quick heads up.
No, I think it's an issue that's an ongoing thing that we're all aware of, and again, referring back to the feasibility assessment that's going on, we really need that before we can take action, but we're aware of the situation. We're all aware of it, and the mayor's aware of it also.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr.
Yep.
Superintendent.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Just with regard to the number, and you can bring it to special ed, how does our numbers compare to our cohort that the DESI cohort, in terms of that? Are we really an outlier in how many students we're getting, or is it really just, I think you alluded to that it might be happening throughout the state, but just because that reinforces, sometimes there's an impression that Woburn is attracting, people to move in with special need. But if that's not the case, we should make that clear so people understand that. So whatever the case is, maybe.
The numbers, I would say, across the board, my counterparts are expressing the same concern with the numbers. I mean, the 142, what's concerning about that is that we're a month into the year, and that the enrollment for preschool is as students age in, so every third birthday throughout the year. So I think that it is a common phenomenon that the preschool numbers are very high. I do think that Woburn sees a higher percentage of students with greater needs. So when you look at the actual breakdown of the classes, you have 11 classrooms, but 5 of them are integrated, which means that you have 6 that are full day, not double sessions, with students that have far more significant special needs. That's where I think we're a little bit higher than other communities.
And that, I'm just thinking down the road, that might be something that would be useful, presentation to the mayor and council, the difference as you're explaining here, what is needed for a high needs classroom as opposed to an integrated classroom, so that they understand that we're not just seeing, a conglomerate of special ed that need things, but there are a lot of ones with specific high needs and so forth. So maybe think about that, the superintendent, and giving a presentation on that. Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much. Okay, we're ready to move on to subcommittee reports. Finance Subcommittee.
We'll be meeting tomorrow.
Okay. All right, anybody have any questions for finance?
We're still paying bills. It's great. The lights aren't out yet.
And when is the food contract up, the food service and contract?
I believe we're in the 3rd year, and we may have one option year.
Okay.
So it's a little bit.
Okay. So, all right, thank you. Communication Subcommittee.
Yes, we met on October 5th at 3:30 in this room. In attendance were myself, school committee members Ellen Crowley and Michael Morenin, along with Ms. Young and Ms. Ryan. Thank you. The sole topic for the meeting was discussing the proposed adoption of proposed drafting and adoption of a school committee statement of protocol, sort of a guiding document, who we are, what our role is, what our procedures are. This is something that came up in our workshop with MASC a few weeks back. And so I took the liberty of sort of putting together a few different examples from both MASC guidance and school committee protocols that I was able to gather from around the state. Sort of as a starting point, not as something that it should be considered a full draft. And I distributed that earlier tonight and gave it to the committee via email as well. Basically, just sort of the idea that we can start with this and begin a conversation that can include the entire committee as we go. What we spent most of our time on in the meeting were the sections on, or sort of loose gatherings of ideas on how we interact with the public, and that can include city officials, city council. And thank you, Mr. Morenin, for that suggestion in the subcommittee meeting as well. And how we treat each other, which is sort of largely how we interact with each other as school committee members, how we as the school committee interact with school administration, sort of making sure that our roles are clear. What we decided in terms of moving forward was that we made some suggestions on the document, and what I handed out today reflects some of the things that we talked about in the subcommittee. But we wanted to leave it largely in draft form so that the full committee could review it and make suggestions in an open meeting before another communication subcommittee could meet to sort of finalize and institutionalize those changes. We also discussed protocols around public comment and whether, what kinds of guidelines we should have before public comment, making sure that members of the public are aware of some of our guiding principles when it comes to public comment. There was some discussion over whether or not public comment should be related to an item on the agenda. This in part was based on my own misreading of our policy, which I've since sort of settled. But there was some discussion over whether or not focusing public comment on items on the agenda might be a beneficial thing going forward. So it might be something to sort of put a pin in for later discussion. And so we resolved to send the protocols document to members directly, which I've done, and discuss potentially putting it on a future agenda item, either for the next meeting or the meeting in November, so that we can, so that members can sort of look through that document, come up with suggestions or ideas, and then sort of hash out some of those in open meeting in our next meeting.
Okay.
And we adjourned at 4:40.
Okay, good. Okay, with regard to setting up a meeting on it, I don't want to bore the public with our wordsmithing type of meeting. So what I would suggest, if you have any comments, word changes that aren't substantive, send that to Mr. Lipset so we can get those in. But I'd really like to focus on the themes, and if there's some statement here that you either totally disagree with or think that needs to be reworded as, to make a different opinion known, that's what I'd like to focus on at the meeting. I don't want to change this thing around.
And if I just want to,
Yeah.
we actually talked about the idea of
Yeah.
wordsmithing, and that was not what we intended
Right.
to do in an open meeting.
Yeah.
That the open meeting would have been, sort of
Right.
the discussion at a committee meeting would have been more exactly what you
Right.
just said, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the bigger ideas here, additional items, and then we can do the wordsmithing
Yeah.
in communications.
Yeah. And I like how you bolded the things so people can see what, generally acceptable, so I think we can pretty much accept those. Like, I'm looking at the guidelines for public comment. I think that's one thing we might want to have a discussion about. And so,
We had a very lively discussion.
Yeah, I'm sure.
About that particular point.
Yeah, so, okay, so, and if anybody, has a counter proposal, you can send it to me, and I'll make sure that gets included in the packet next time.
We'll negotiate.
Yeah. That way, we can be sent out, so you don't have to unveil it at the meeting, and people, trying to understand it and so forth. Okay, so we'll put this on the agenda for the next meeting. Okay, good. And we can get public comment, too, if they desire. Okay.
So, quick question on that, because you'd said if there's things you want to change, send it to,
If you're changing a phrasing, seek to work collaboratively, you want to
Yeah,
say, work collaboratively, something like that, you can send that to him. But if you want to get rid of that whole statement, we're not going to collaborate with city officials.
no, I understand, but I guess my question is, so Mr. Lipset gets it and changes it, or says this was a proposed change
Yeah,
or
but-
tweaking of line 7?
Yeah, that's, we were sort of talking about that in the
Yeah.
subcommittee.
Okay,
in terms
I mean, I wouldn't want to send you something, you
Yeah,
change it.
and we don't
people
want
know
to
what's
make
been
those
changed.
changes outside of.
Right.
Okay.
So if you have a word change, then you can send me the final document before we send it, and then we'll send everything out. If people send me comments that they want to make about this, we'll put it all together as part of the packet and send it out. Okay?
That's good.
All right, thank you. Thank you for doing that. Okay, good discussion. Next up, Curriculum and Data Trends Subcommittee.
We have not met, Mr. Chairman, although had we met, we would have had Ms. Young give us a MCAS presentation, so I think we're ahead of the game there. But we will see if she has any upcoming topics in the future. So we heard from her this evening on a great presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for curriculum? Moving on. Personnel Subcommittee, Ms. Cormier.
We will be meeting tomorrow.
Thank you. Any questions for personnel? We are going to have an executive session in this meeting to discuss teachers' negotiations, so that'll be under the executive session. Okay, moving on to resource and capital planning, and then we'll do...
No, we have not met, alluded to the,
But by God, we're going to be...
Planet of the Apes. Obviously, that was
Poor guy, I think the cable.
referred to many times about the feasibility study, and Mr. Alconad, I'm sure will keep me updated.
Okay. And then the Student Services Subcommittee?
Yes, we met
Yeah.
on
After all.
on October 5th, 2022 at 4:40 PM. Roll call was Ellen Crowley, Andrew Lipset, Michael Mulrennan, Assistant Superintendents Maureen Ryan and Courtney Young. Basically, I'll summarize my minutes. There are 2 pressure points of special education need. One is children that are moving into Woburn. And I want to say that sometimes it sounds like they're some sort of a burden. We refer to move-ins. These are real children. And moving into Woburn, because Woburn is a very welcoming community. And we had 44 students that were being served on an IEP move into Woburn since September. And this is a pressure point and something that this committee needs to know about in terms of resources. 50% of those students that moved into Woburn have substantially separate programming on their IEPs and have programming. And so the Woburn Public Schools needs to respond. The other pressure point is students are becoming eligible for special education, and this is due to the learning loss that was put upon students during COVID. So as a result, there is a need for special education staffing. And so Assistant Superintendent Ryan wanted us to know that there is a distinct need for a board-certified behavioral analyst, a speech and language pathologist, a school psychologist, paraprofessionals to the tune of 8, and a special education teacher. So these are needs, and our students need them. So she'll be advocating for these positions, and they'll be, the administration will be looking at other ways to do it, but it very well could be a mid-year appropriation of funds. On a positive note, the SOAR program, because the Woburn Public Schools was proactive in creating that program is also being overwhelmed by the new eligibility of students. So after the administration has had time to do some research and look at funding sources and other things, may very well come back to Student Service and Achievement Subcommittee to discuss these needs more in depth. And this subcommittee adjourned at 5:30 p.m.
And note that there's a homeschooling policy coming out of your subcommittee.
Yes. In addition, next meeting will be asking to remove the homeschooling policy off the table for adoption.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure, Assistant Superintendent Ryan, can I refer to her? I just want to make sure I got everything right. Is there anything else? Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And so, obviously, this will be going to personnel, these needs too, so you'll be discussing that. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, okay. And could, just one clarification, the first, the behavioral analytic I think.
BCBA.
Oh, it's the
certified.
That's
It's
the BCBA, but you
Yes.
just spelled it out, so that's what it is.
Spelled it out.
I've seen those 1,000 times, okay. I
Yes.
thought it was something
Yes,
different.
you know,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah, okay. Never mind, thank you.
Yes.
All right, anything else for Student Services and Achievement Subcommittee? And maybe your subcommittee can look at a breakdown of the Mcas scores for special needs groups and so forth, because that's always a concern that we're providing them the services to succeed, so that would be good.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, so we will discuss homeschooling next meeting and
Yeah.
then vote?
Yep. Okay. All right, correspondence. Anybody have any correspondence? This is a quiet week for emails, so I didn't get any. So that was good. Okay, future agenda items. We have one that we definitely know. We'll hopefully have CPAC the next meeting, and we'll have some other things. Superintendent and I will meet next Monday or Tuesday to set the agenda for the following week. And I think we're actually talking about potentially moving that meeting. Right, Ms. Crowley?
Mr. Mulrennan?
No, I think it was Ms. Crowley.
No,
Oh, it was Mr. Mulrennan. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Oh, the person that's retired needs the meeting moved?
I know that. It's not too often, but retirement even changed my calendar a little bit. So we got an upcoming meeting. I have it down for Wednesday, the 26th, and if the committee would indulge me to change that to Tuesday, the 25th, if possible, 7 p.m. here at the Joyce.
Anybody have any?
26 for 25. Sorry about
The
that.
26th is National Honor Society anyway, right?
I think that was announced tonight as
Yeah,
well.
The 26th is National
All
Honor
right, so we're going to the 25th.
Right.
If the committee would
Yeah.
allow
I
that.
think-
I would definitely prefer the 27th or the 24th,
Okay.
if that's possible.
27th is elementary school parent-teacher conferences, which may matter to some of us more than others.
Absolutely.
And maybe LPAC?
And
LPAC will be, is being moved.
there we go.
24th?
24th, Monday, at work.
Wide open.
That's fine by me.
Also Diwali.
Thank you.
All right. So I have a motion then to move the meeting to the 24th?
I'll make a motion to move Wednesday, October 26th, 7 p.m. to Monday, October 24th, 7 p.m.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Yay.
Okay.
That's for the future
All right.
For future agenda items,
Yep.
Bob Davis.
Oh, yes, yep. We're getting towards Veterans Day, so he'll probably be the first meeting a week before. Yes, I think we are.
Before, no, I think,
11th.
That might be the next one.
Well, the
15th.
4th, oh,
We have November 15th.
Yeah, so that's,
all right, so I'll try to
That's
get
great.
him on the, or would you rather hear his view of the post-Veterans Day parade?
up to him,
Okay,
whatever his availability
okay,
is.
so we'll reach out to him and see whether he'd like to come before.
Because we're only doing the one in November, right?
Okay.
We had mentioned before this wellness committee that
Yep.
kind of has been floating around. Do we need to report on that because that is a requirement for the National School Lunch Program? I was looking through some things and I saw that there's a waiver for reporting on the wellness committees. And so I didn't know if that was something that was going to be coming up soon that we would need to address. I know it's been a conversation.
The administration will determine that.
Just want to put that in everybody's head.
Yep, thank you. And the administration is still working on those policies.
Yeah.
That are out there. Okay. Anything else? Yeah, just get it before Monday if you have any other agenda items that you were thinking about. Okay. All right, as I mentioned, we're going to have an executive session. The purpose will be to discuss negotiations with the Woburn Teachers Association. No vote.
Make a motion, we go into